The first lady ever to qualify at Indianapolis.
Ladies and gentlemen, start your engine.
On this special edition of Inside Indiana Business with Gerry Dick, influential women who've made their mark on Indiana.
Here's the story of a lovely lady.
Influential women who've made their mark on Indiana.
Frank is a good, a wise, and a kind man. I know he'll be a great governor.
Leaders.
I want to thank all of the fans, my family's here, all out here, and my fans and all the people that have supported me along this journey.
Trailblazers.
A year and a half ago, Jane Foley was a second-string newsreader in Indianapolis.
Changemakers.
Amelia Earhart and her crew at Oakland, California.
Ladies and gentlemen, the national champion team resides in West Lafayette, Indiana.
Celebrating 50 years of Title IX.
No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in,
be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under
any education program or activity, receiving federal financial assistance. 37 words that changed everything.
This week, we look at the game changers, the trailblazers, and the influential women of Indiana.
Hello and welcome to Inside Indiana Business. I'm Gerry Dick. We have something special planned for this week's show in honor of Women's History Month. I'm going to open the show as usual, but then we'll have female guest hosts for each of our segments as we look at the influential Indiana women. And we begin with a look at the 50th anniversary of Title IX. The state of sports could have a different look today in a big way on the field or court or in the front office had it not been for Title IX, the federal civil rights law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in education programs and activities. It was introduced to Congress by Indiana's own Senator Birch Bayh and signed into law by President Nixon in 1972. With more on how Title IX has impacted her career and accelerated change in women's athletics, pleased to welcome to the show Purdue University Athletics Senior Associate Athletics Director, Nancy Cross. Nancy, as always, welcome.
Thank you.
Title IX doesn't seem 50 years. What a milestone and a landmark. As you look at Title IX, the impacts have been so widespread and so consequential. What's your take on the impact over these 50 years and what Title IX has done?
Just as you said, it's been so incredibly significant, but we always try to stress with our student athletes that this isn't just about women's athletics. I mean, I think they have been the most visible, probably the front porch for Title IX in terms of where they were and where they are now. But so many people have benefited, men and women. And when I talk to classes at Purdue, I always comment that we probably wouldn't have a lot of our male basketball coaches or volleyball coaches coaching women's teams if the salaries weren't commensurate, or if they had to drive the van, or they had to do their own peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, which was the way it was when we all started out.
Yeah, very interesting. So it's about sports, certainly, but really education.
It is about education, absolutely.
Yeah.
And when we celebrated, the 40th anniversary at Purdue a few years ago, it was an all-university celebration. It wasn't just about athletics.
Yeah. As you reflect back, how has Title IX impacted you, maybe back in high school and throughout your career?
Well, in high school, I played a number of sports, and in reality, it really hadn't impacted it yet because I graduated in 73, so 71 through 73, it had not impacted it yet. But when I got into college, I had grown up on the East Coast, and probably opportunities for young women and girls in high school and junior high and were a little bit more established than they were in the Midwest. And so when I got to college and then to graduate school at Purdue, I was a little surprised at how hard they had to fight for everything. And I think Title IX, when it was passed, there were so many people that embraced it because the spirit of the law was that you were going to treat people equally, women equally, and weren't going to discriminate. And then there were people who did things because it was the law. And if you're doing it only because it's the law, then you still have an uphill battle.
Yeah. As mentioned earlier, a Title IX author was then Senator Birch Bayh. Birch's son, Evan, is my guest next week on the Business and Beyond podcast. And I asked him about his dad's authoring of the Title IX legislation. And here's what he had to say.
I will occasionally have women athletic directors or coaches come up to me and say that they wouldn't have had the opportunities that they've had in their life if that hadn't opened up the doors for them to be athletes and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's a big part of his legacy.
Yeah, Evan was really proud of that fact. And we were talking off camera that Birch Bayh's kind of the impetus to do this dealt with who would become his wife, right, and discrimination.
Right. And again, I heard this third story, and when we used to do a lot of research on Title IX. We heard him talk about the fact that when he was in high school, he had gone in the summer to some camp, and I don't know if it was a debate, national debate thing or whatever, but he met his future wife. And there was talk about both of them applying to the University of Virginia. And he applied, obviously got accepted, and then his future wife got a letter saying, sorry, as a female, you shouldn't even apply. And that actually shocked and stayed with Birch so long that his point was, why would you ever discount 50% of the population? And he had been so impressed with her, how bright she was and how talented she was, and then to think that she wasn't going to get the same opportunities to even apply to a university. Yeah.
So much progress has been made in these 50 years, but yet we see examples, and we were talking about that a moment ago last year at the women's Final Four in San Antonio, and the disparity between the workout facilities for the women versus the men.
Right. People always ask me kind of what the litmus test is. And I think that when you make decisions that are based on what's best for a student athlete, then you've arrived. But if you're making decisions about what's best for one program versus another, you've already discriminated. And despite the fact that we have come so incredibly far in 50 years, I think last year was just another example of we're not quite there yet. And the thing that bothered me most had even happened before we got to San Antonio, and that was the day of the announcement. That you made, the NCAA made a huge deal about, what they were going to do for the men and in a bubble and in Indianapolis, and it was great for Indianapolis. And the fact that you weren't making a joint announcement, again, made it look like we're going to do this for the men, but we haven't even really thought about what we're going to do for the women.
As you look going forward, what's kind of next, the next 50 years, as you look at the impact of Title IX? What are areas that you see can be improved or advanced as you go over the next number of years?
Again, I think when everybody at the table has a voice and everybody at the table is making decisions about what are best for the student athletes and not segmenting the market, so to speak, not saying, we're going to do this for the men. It shouldn't matter if it's a male or female swimmer, a male or female golfer, tennis player, basketball, football. Every decision that's made should be made based on what's best for the student athletes. And then, I always look for additional opportunities for women. And when people have an opening, they're not going to automatically just assume that, that one gender can handle that situation better than another.
Great perspective, as always, on Title IX legislation. 50 years of a big impact in Indiana. Nancy Cross is the Senior Associate Athletic Director at Purdue. Nancy, thanks for all you do, too, for women's sports, for sports in general as well, and thanks for being here.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Right. Well, 2 of Indiana's 3 largest colleges are led by women. Sue Ellspermann at Ivy Tech and Pam Whitten at IU. President Whitten is my guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast. She was named IU's 19th president last year and is the first woman to ever serve in that role. She sees a big opportunity in collaboration with Purdue President Mitch Daniels to recruit and keep talent in the state.
President Daniels and I have also had conversations about having very mutual shared interest in not only recruiting talent to the state of Indiana to go to school at our institutions and talent within the state of Indiana to stay here and go to our institutions, but we also are like-minded in wanting to keep those people in the state of Indiana beyond their graduation as well.
Much more with IU President Pam Whitten and many other influential Hoosier women on the Business and Beyond podcast. To check out our roster of guests, Just go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com and click on the subscribe tab.
Thanks, Gary. Well, look up the definition of game changer and you might find the name Mel Raines. Meet the woman who has served at the White House, planned a Super Bowl, and currently oversees the more than $300 million facelift at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. That story next.
Now there's you. I've been knowing right from wrong, singing the same old song.
Welcome back to this special edition of Inside Indiana Business featuring influential Indiana women. I'm Mary Rachel Redmond. Well, from the world of politics to president of Pacers Sports and Entertainment, hard work has taken this born and bred Hoosier to places she never thought possible. And it all started with an internship. I pulled up a chair on the court at Gainbridge Fieldhouse this week with Mel Raines to get the skinny on her unbelievable career. Well, born and raised in South Bend, a Notre Dame fan.
Notre Dame leading the Irish.
Absolutely. You know, growing up, was there something that inspired you to want to go into politics and then later sports?
You know, I absolutely mistakenly fell into politics. Got back for my senior year in Bloomington and saw an internship opportunity in Washington, D.C., where I could not have picked that out on a map.
That internship in the office of the United States Senator from Indiana, Dan Coates.
Applied for an internship with Senator Coates, never having taken a poli-sci class, and got the job. So got the internship and then ended up getting hired a few months later.
So what was it like on Capitol Hill? You watch it on TV and you're kind of like, wow.
Well, it was really different in the early 90s, and we didn't have email when I started. So I used to sort the mail, and I was answering the phones during the Clarence Thomas Supreme Court confirmation, and the phone lines kept going down because you couldn't send an email to your senator, you had to call. Those hearings go pretty quickly. How you worked in the early 90s were just incredibly different than you do today, but it was a great place. It was certainly more bipartisan.
After 5 years of public service, Raines departed D.C. for a private sector job in the Big Apple.
I had a great job with a corporation doing something I really enjoyed. I worked for Altria Corporate Affairs in New York, across the street from Grand Central Station.
September 11th, 2001 would forever change America, and it would have a profound effect on Mel.
A big part of the reason why I felt the call to go back to public service was having lived through September 11th in New York. I mean, it was, you know, it was an awful, awful day. It was an awful time for our country, and I felt that I should make that personal sacrifice in some ways to go back into public service after having lived through that.
So when she got the call from Vice President Dick Cheney's office, she answered.
I was assistant to Vice President Cheney for political affairs. So in essence, I was his political director. I worked in the White House, and in the 2006 election cycle.
I've got to imagine that first briefing. Were you a little nervous?
Oh my gosh, yes. I was terrified. When I went to interview, I was terrified. You know, you walk in where the Marine Guard is standing, and there's a receptionist there, and you sit down and you're thinking to yourself, like, how did this girl from South Bend wind up in the West Wing about to interview for a job reporting to the vice president? Like, how did that happen?
You think about, you know, the egos kind of politicians and perhaps maybe in sports, particularly professional sports. So, you know, what was the transition like from politics to professional sports coming back to Indiana?
Yeah, it was not as difficult as you might think. I mean, you've got to be nimble, you've got to adjust to change really quickly, you've got to be able to work long hours. You're never really off. It's a 24/7, both are 24/7 jobs, really.
It seems like sacrifice is a common theme with your success. For young women, you know, that are starting out in perhaps politics or sports, you're right, the compensation, it's not there. What is your advice to them to keep going? When does it pay off?
I think, well, for me, you know, a couple of months ago, I was named president and COO of the Pacers. So, but it took a ways to get there. I would say a couple things. You never know who's watching you when you're in a job, and many of my jobs have come from someone who noticed what I was doing when I didn't know they were looking. There's that, and then don't turn down opportunities. Whenever there was a chance to, I always tell the young people here, we do gold outs on the seats, and we put T-shirts on every seat. I notice who volunteers for those things. It's not something you have to do, and it's not always fun to do that in the balcony, but it's important. It's the kind of thing that shows that you're in it. You want to learn the whole business. You want to help however you can, and so when those opportunities are presented, take them. You know, and don't look for a new title or compensation. Just do it for the opportunity to learn and the access to other people.
You talk about opportunity. You know, this is the 50-year anniversary of Title IX, and I don't think in 1972, perhaps they would have thought someone like Amel Raines would be, you know, president, you know, chief operating officer of, you know, Pacer Sports and Entertainment.
I will say with Title IX, I mean, I was a young girl in the 70s who played sports. And that teamwork is definitely something I've always worked on teams, and I've always enjoyed working on teams. And I think that how important that is to women. I know there's a lot of studies about successful females and having participated in sports. The numbers are off the charts, and so
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that's just a really important moment in history that shouldn't be overlooked for sure.
In the coming weeks, we'll show you the $360 million renovation at Gainbridge Fieldhouse that Mel is heading up. Basketball and concert fans alike should get excited. It's pretty awesome. Well, what do wallpaper, a ping pong table, and airport luggage have in common? They're part of the unique story of how an Indiana-based handbag company became a global sensation. More on the Vera Bradley brand and one of the co-founders behind it when we come back.
Nothing keeps me.
Well, Fort Wayne-based Vera Bradley is known for colorful, iconic prints and designs on purses, bags, luggage, and lots more. But did you know the co-founders each borrowed some money, not that much, by the way, and started making the cotton handbags in Barbara Bradley Backard's basement on a ping pong table? I caught up with Barbara at the Bradley, Fort Wayne's first boutique hotel she helped design. Nearly 40 years ago, she started a company that continues to bring bright patterned luggage and handbags to the masses.
Vera Bradley.
Now the genius behind the iconic Vera Bradley line has officially opened downtown Fort Wayne's first boutique hotel.
I've lived in Fort Wayne now for over 40 years, and we were just missing that element of a city, and I didn't think there was anything that really represented who we were.
So after retiring as chief creative officer for the Fort Wayne-based lifestyle brand in 2017,
I think of these things.
Mind you, in her late 70s, Barbara Bradley Backard decided it was high time to embark on her 30-year dream to build a hotel that reflected her own home in the heart of downtown.
I was in the company every single day for 30 years, 35. And then as we got bigger, and we hired other people to do some of the things that I did, I could get away a little more. So then I started having these other ambitions, you know, like, why not do it now?
And that she did. The Bradley is a $30 million full-service boutique hotel that features 124 guest rooms, 9 suites, 2 restaurants, and a rooftop bar.
This is your typical guest room.
Wow. And I can already see the headboard. That is very vintage Vera Bradley.
This would be like you're coming into my home and staying in my house.
So did you personally pick out what's in each room?
I did.
You've got great taste, I must say.
It looks Vera Bradley without screaming Vera Bradley. It's more of a wink than a shout.
So in terms of color schemes, is it a lot of blues?
I always say blue always works. I said God knew what he was doing. You know, blue works for decor. I don't think there are many people that walk into a blue room and don't think it feels cozy.
Well, since opening over the summer, Barbara Bradley Backard's newest venture in the boutique hotel business has already gotten a lot of traction, not only locally, but nationwide. In fact, during our interview in July, she hinted at perhaps another hotel project in the works. Stay tuned. Well, influential Indiana women serving it up in the Hoosier restaurant industry. Next, Yelp's Brittany Smith samples what Hoosier women-owned businesses are cooking up.
Thanks for joining us for this week's special edition of Inside Indiana Business with Gerry Dick, Influential Indiana Women. I'm Jen Schimmelfennig, President of Pivot Marketing. Consumers want to champion businesses that align with their values and spend their hard-earned money with businesses they care about, like women-owned businesses. For this week's Trendiana segment, we've rounded up 4 hot and new women-owned businesses from across the state for Women's History Month. I'm pleased to be joined by Yelp's Director of Community Campaigns, Brittany Smith, with a look at these special businesses. Britt, welcome.
It's great to see you, Jen. Happy Women's History Month, too.
Oh, thanks, you too. As two women in business, it's wonderful to be here.
Likewise, and you know, one of the things that's really exciting about these businesses that we're featuring is it's hard enough to open a business, let alone during the pandemic, and so many of these businesses actually opened in the last year.
Absolutely. I think the first one we want to talk about is Puretrition. Tell me about them.
Located in the Kennedy King neighborhood, right here in the downtown Indianapolis area. They actually were just recognized in Yelp's top list of ones to watch, Black-owned businesses across the country, out of 2 businesses in the Midwest highlighted. And they're conveniently located just a few blocks from the Monon Trail, as well as the Kennedy King Park. So you can grab a smoothie, a acai bowl, fresh juices. They're very vegan and veggie friendly. You can see a beautiful spread here of several of their options. And the owner, Alita, has been getting amazing reviews right out of the door in her first few years of the business.
Wonderful. I think I'll order it for lunch.
I know, they offer delivery. I'm guilty of getting it several times.
Fabulous. And the next one I've actually been to. Beautiful space. Can't wait for the patio to open. I know it's getting warmer. We're close.
Yes.
And that's Bodie.
Yeah, Bodie, far east end of Mass Ave, just opened up just shy of a year ago. And like you said, it's just as beautiful on the inside as it is out on that patio space. The weeks are counting down for actually putting it into use. And their food is gorgeous there. You know, we've got here the tom yum soup, their cocktails. Folks really love the pad thai and the drunken noodles. Their cocktail menu is actually coming out for the spring menu here in a few weeks. So if you're looking for a good drink with your pad thai. And they've really got creative menu options there. So they're using a lot of lemongrass, coconut milk, lime juice. So it's just as much about the cocktails as it is the menu at Bodie.
Wonderful. The next one, we'll hop over to Fountain Square and talk about Onata.
Yeah, Onata. They're actually just being highlighted as well in a national list of women-owned businesses by Yelp for ones to watch. And Jessie, the owner there, puts a lot of thought into the items that you find on the shelves. So they've got over 100 artisans featured. 98% of those businesses are minority-owned. And of all the sales that are going on at the business, they're giving back to the community, indigenous groups, sustainability. So a lot of thought behind every product and what they're doing at the business. So if you're looking for a gift, you can find candles, plants, they're out for classes. Anyone on your list, you can go there and probably find a great gift for them.
Wow, so from Fountain Square to Jeffersonville, let's talk a little bit about the Scoop Waffle and Sweet Shop.
Yeah, it's owned by Mary, and they're known for really over-the-top great desserts. Just opened up in the last few months. Folks can't get enough of their waffle dishes topped with ice cream. It's a wonderful business.
Well, thank you so much, Britt. I can't wait to check all these places out. This is wonderful.
Thanks so much, Jen.
Keep going. Ahead in our next half hour, we catch up with the woman breaking barriers at DePaul University. We'll talk with Dr. Lori White about the value of a liberal arts education in this high-tech world.
Welcome back to this special edition of Inside Indiana Business as we feature influential Indiana women. I'm IBJ editor Leslie Whitebetter. It's time now for Eye on Education. Dr. Lori White made history 2 years ago when she became the first woman and person of color to be named president of DePaul University. Her aha moment came when she visited Meharry Hall, where she checked out portraits of past presidents, and it hit her. She needed to step forward and change the image people have of leaders in higher education. And Dr. Lori White has done just that. For more on the challenges she's faced during the pandemic and what her vision is for DePaul, we are joined by Dr. Lori White. Dr. White, thank you for joining us.
So happy to be here, Leslie.
You came to DePaul at the start of the pandemic, and so you and maybe half of your students have only known the school in that light. I read that you said the pandemic, though, has reinforced the value of a liberal arts education. Can you elaborate on why that is?
I would be happy to. I've been nothing other than a pandemic president, and I very much believe the shining star of the pandemic was to reinforce the value of the education that DePauw provides. We're 100% residential university, and what students told us they missed most was the opportunity to study here on campus with our fabulous professors and be in community with their classmates. And when you also think about all of the tools that we had to use to respond to the pandemic, that's what a liberal arts education is all about, providing an interdisciplinary lens to be able to solve society's problems and challenges.
Do you think the pandemic will have some long-term effects on how you do things or how universities in general do things going forward?
I hope that it does. As they say, never waste a good challenge. So a couple of things we learned from the pandemic is higher education has a reputation of being very slow to change. And we were able to adjust quite quickly to moving all of our classes online in record time. And while DePauw will never be a fully online institution, we certainly have learned that we can deliver aspects of the student experience using virtual tools. So that's certainly one lesson that we learned.
I think these changes are going to be really important moving forward. I don't have to tell you that there is an enrollment cliff coming that universities have been talking about and worrying about, basically a population shift with fewer high school students graduating and going to college. There are some who think that's going to be especially difficult for private, smaller schools. But it sounds like maybe you are finding that the pandemic has changed the way you might be able to react to the enrollment cliff.
Well, certainly all of us are conscious of the enrollment cliff, and it's really important for us to reinforce the value of a liberal arts residential education. And at the same time, I think we have to be unafraid of liberal arts colleges to explore areas of study that perhaps traditionally we would not have offered at liberal arts colleges. Fields, for example, like business education and others that would not be typically offered at a residential liberal arts college.
Do you think that you are already seeing some of those changes from the enrollment cliff, and are you already having to make those adjustments?
Well, certainly we need to be ever conscious of the challenges, and we also have to think about how can we most make our education relevant to the students of today and the students of tomorrow to prepare them to lead in a rapidly changing and evolving world. And I think those institutions that are focused on future focused will be the ones that will survive most in this very competitive higher education environment.
We have just a few seconds, but I really wanted to see if you could reflect on that moment when you realized you wanted to come to DePauw and really change the look of a higher education leader. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I've spoken often about the call that I heard in historic Meharry Hall on the DePauw campus, which is where all of the portraits of DePauw's previous presidents hang. I'm president number 21. And as I looked at presidents 1 through 20 and realized none looked like me, I realized that in order for the universe to see leadership as perhaps different than what had been historically the case for college presidents, I needed to say yes when the offer came. And only 80% of college presidents don't look like me. I am African American, I am female, and I want all of our students to know what is possible.
Well, Dr. White, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Very much. Thank you so much, Leslie.
Over the past year, the talents of many influential Indiana women have been featured on the Business and Beyond podcast. One of them, TAMIKA Catchings. She led the Fever to a WNBA championship, was named league MVP, and has 4 Olympic gold medals in her trophy case. She was also inducted into the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame last year with the same class as her childhood friend, the late, great Kobe Bryant. TAMIKA and Kobe formed a lifelong bond after spending time together overseas when their fathers played basketball together in Italy.
We only spent that 1 year together, but it's interesting like how when you spend so much time in 1 year, it becomes embedded in your life. And people ask like, well, what was he like back then? I'm like, we were kids. What do normal kids do? I mean, we did all the crazy things that we probably shouldn't have done.
To check out all of our podcasts, just go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com and click on the subscribe tab. No need to know how to code to build your own app. Up next, see how Carmel-based Lumavate and its team of influential Indiana women is creating a way for businesses to get into the technology game. And
in 1935, world-famous aviator Amelia Earhart became the first women's career counselor in the nation at Purdue University. Earhart taught in the classroom and inspired a number of female students to explore degrees outside of home economics. It would be the newly formed Purdue Research Foundation that funded Earhart's infamous final flight in 1937. Her disappearance remains a mystery to this day.
2022 will be a big year for Carmel-based Lumavate. Business is growing, and the startup recently closed on a $6 million funding round. Lumavate simplifies the app building process for businesses so they can create their own apps rather than the standard model of outsourcing it. One of the startup's biggest clients is the healthcare industry. Lumavate is also led by a female chief executive officer, which is unusual. Only 15% of CEOs in the nation's tech industry are women. Lumavate CEO Stephanie Cox joins me now to talk more about women in tech and the startup's recent success. Congratulations on the funding, first of all.
Thank you so much, Kylie.
So let's start with what Lumavate does. You say you make everyone an app builder, no need to know code, and of course we're talking about HTML coding, which makes most people's eyes cross.
You're not wrong.
Right.
So really what we do is provide you all the Legos. So think of them as different shapes and sizes that you can put together to build your own app without needing any development resources at all. And they can be used for a wide range of use cases, everything from internal communications to wayfinding to a content app that helps you find the right sunscreen.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so the healthcare industry is one of your biggest client segments. That includes some big names in the Hoosier state. So give us a quick look at your healthcare clients and how they're using it.
Yeah, we work with our healthcare industry customers in a really big way. So IU Health, Roche, Becton Dixon is another great example of healthcare customers that we work with. IU Health, I'd love to talk about them for a second because they're using our platform in a variety of ways. So if you've been to Riley recently and you've tried to navigate, you probably use an app called Navigate Riley that helps you find your location from the Simon parking garage, floor 3 to X-Ray. You also might see their digital patient experience app, which was built on Lumavate. And we also do patient tracker with them, which allows you to know where your loved one is in surgery. So if you can't go due to COVID, you can actually stay up to date from home, get text messages or email alerts to let you know when they've progressed in their surgery process.
Okay, very good. I know Roche is another big name you have. So we talked in the introduction about being a female CEO in the tech industry. We talked about in Indiana and Indianapolis, you're one of only a handful of female CEOs. And then broadly in the US, only 15% of CEOs in tech are women. Only 28% of the tech workforce are comprised of women. So you've said you think one of the biggest hurdles for women in tech is believing that they can be a leader in tech. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when you think about what your career looks like as you go through college and you go early on in your career, I didn't see a lot of women CEOs. So that wasn't something that I said, oh, this is what's next for me. I always thought what was my ultimate kind of goal was to be a CMO because I did see a few of those. And it really wasn't until about 7 years ago that someone told me that I could be a CEO and I'd be good at it, that made me start actually thinking about that as an option. So I think part of the challenge today is that women don't know that they could lead companies, that they could found companies, they could become a CEO, or the path to get there. And so part of, I believe my job and all other women in tech and any industry really is to help others understand that this is a path for them and help mentor them to get to that path.
And you mentioned off camera that part of that is thinking outside the box when you're hiring for the tech industry and not just hiring a certain type that you're used to hiring. So talk a little bit about that.
One of the biggest challenges right now is hiring, and I think it's for every company, including tech. And the problem that we face is we often go after the same profile of candidate, right? So oftentimes you might say, SDRs, let's hire someone who went to college and was a college athlete. Well, that's great, but everyone else is going after them. What people don't realize is there is a lot of talent out there, whether it's former school teachers or car salesmen who have the same skill set needed to be successful in a role like an SDR, but aren't often considered. So part of, I think, our challenge as leaders is to start saying, what are the personality traits that make a great candidate that I'm trying to hire, and worry a little bit less about what does their background look like, because I can teach you how to do the role. I can't teach you to, be humble or have grit or hustle or be, just really great to work with. And I think that is the shift that needs to happen.
All right, well, Stephanie, I think you got the hustle. I know Lumovate's doing great things. Thanks for being on the show today.
My pleasure.
Well, when Karen E. Lane and her daughter MINA STARSIAK Hawk started renovating homes in Indianapolis back in 2007, they never dreamed they'd wind up doing it on TV in front of 2 million viewers each week. The duo star on HGTV's hugely popular show, Good Bones, and both joined us last year on the Business and Beyond podcast. They started renovating homes together shortly after MINA got out of college, loved it so much they created their own business, Two Chicks and a Hammer. Well, that caught the eye of HGTV, and by 2015, they hit the airwaves. Karen talked about breaking barriers for women in the construction business.
What I find is even people who think, women can't do this,
right,
eventually recognize, but they're doing it.
Just a few weeks after our conversation with Karen E. Lane, we sat down with the other half of the Good Bones duo, Karen's daughter, MINA STARSIAK Hawk. She got the home renovation bug shortly after graduating from IU back in 2007. MINA bought a home she could afford, fixed it up with her mom, and fell in love with the process of bringing new life to old homes on the near south side of Indianapolis. MINA talked about how the supply chain bottleneck has had a huge impact on construction costs.
Everything is so much more expensive, and on Good Bones, you can see our profit margins are not huge. So a $20,000, $30,000 profit margin, if anything, gets eaten up insanely quickly when metal costs double, lumber costs double. I mean, to get insulation in one of our projects, I could wait 30 days and pay $46 a roll, or I could wait 5 days and pay $109. And time is money, so I paid $109 a bundle. There's a worker shortage like everyone is experiencing. So it's been incredibly, incredibly challenging.
Again, if you want to check out all of our conversations on the Business and Beyond podcast, just go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com and click on the subscribe tab. Up next, COVID-19, just one of the many public health areas on the agenda to tackle for women-led organization Together We Will. We'll have details when we come back. And
one of the most influential Indiana women on the globe grew up in New Palestine. Angela Ahrens is famous for modernizing London-based luxury brand Burberry after 8 years as its CEO. Her next career move, conquering the tech world, joining the team at Apple as Senior Vice President, where Ahrens was the highest paid employee, earning nearly double the salary of Apple CEO Tim Cook.
Welcome back to a special edition of Inside Indiana Business with Gerry Dick, Influential Indiana Women. I'm Sunny Lee Williams, founder and president of TechServe. Many Hoosiers are impacted by structural and systemic barriers to good health, infant and maternal mortality, environmental injustice, substance use disorder, mental health needs, COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy, access issues, violence, and much, much more. To help combat these factors, the Indiana Department of Health is implementing through its Office of Minority Health, Together We Will, a mini grants and technical assistance program investing over $5 million during 2021 through 2023 in community initiatives that address health inequities for racial and ethnic minorities, Indigenous peoples, and rural communities. Joining me to discuss these concerns are Antoinette Holt, Executive Director of the Office of Minority Health at the Indiana Department of Health, and Purdue Healthcare Advisors Director, Melanie Klein. Welcome, ladies. So, Antoinette, tell us, how is this opportunity different from others, and what is the history of the Indiana Together We Will grant?
So this opportunity is different because we've always worked on addressing the needs and concerns of those people that are underserved. And so because of recent highlights such as COVID-19 and different things that have happened societal-wise, there has become this opportunity that the CDC has given as far as resources to be able to provide that necessary bump to that community organization. So the CDC is giving out $2 billion all over the United States worth of resources to different states, and Indiana was fortunate to be awarded $34 million of that. And so from that, we have an opportunity to be able to address the needs and concerns of racial ethnic minorities and disparate populations and rural health areas to where we can be successful in making sure that health equity is resonated throughout.
That's phenomenal. With the Indiana Department of Health at the helm supporting the grant administration of $34 million across the state, and especially $5 million into the program for community solutions with Together We Will. Melanie, tell us a little bit about how you're doing this massive strategic planning across the state.
Oh, absolutely. So yes, Purdue University is a primary partner with the Indiana Department of Health on this huge initiative called IHOPE, which stands for Indiana, Healthy Opportunities for People Everywhere. And we are engaging at Purdue in over 30 counties across the state of Indiana. And we are starting with a bottom-up approach. So it's very much about listening and understanding what communities' needs are that they would like to work on as far as priorities, to begin to really accelerate our recovery from this pandemic and really focus on the underlying causes of why we've seen such disparities in health outcomes across our state.
I love that branding, I hope, with healthy opportunities for people everywhere. Talk a little bit about some of the services that you're offering to counties, really for community collaboration to come together to receive this funding and be sustainable.
Yes, so we're starting with listening sessions to really understand basically what their needs are, and those will be followed by project management. We'll begin with strategy. So we will begin with strategy events, planning events for the community. That will be followed with process improvement, where my team of lean experts will come in and help communities build connections between agencies that may never have existed before to really build the wraparound services that we think will be necessary to address those disparities that are present in our communities.
You talked about lean, process improvement, project management strategy. This sounds like a county business plan. So what are your visions, ladies, of what the actual impact of the programs will be in the counties?
Well, our goal from the Office of Minority Health is to make sure that we're involving our community entities and partners, faith-based entities, people that serve underrepresented populations, that they're at the table, not necessarily brought at the table at the end, but they're part of the planning process, as Melanie has said there from the beginning. So we know specifically how to address their needs and concerns. And not only that, but be able to give them the skills, the guidelines that they need so they can be able to even further along, even after this grant is over, to be able to be successful in Indiana and making sure that they are reaching their communities.
That's phenomenal. Well, Melanie, what additional areas do you look at for vision and impact into the community?
So as Antoinette mentioned, that we're really looking to partner with non-traditional partners across the state of Indiana, and that is about for us to help them to address these concerns that
oftentimes have been underserved, and we will look to bring people together and partner across sectors. So we're looking for employers, healthcare entities, as well as other non-traditional partners that may never, like I said, have been at tables, so community coalitions. Great. And to our business community, what is your single call to action for our employers and our organizations that are really developing workforce within their counties?
I want them definitely to be part at the table because, as Melanie said, non-traditional partners are essential, but I think it's very important that they understand that health is more than just the physical aspect of how we feel, but it involves so many different things. So if you want your employee not just to come healthy, not to have a fever, but if they have access, transportation issues, food access issues, different things to help in that process to make it successful.
Thank you so much, Antoinette. I really appreciate both Antoinette and Melanie being with us today and sharing more about both I Hope and Indiana Together We Will. And we'll be right back after this. Stay with us.
Did you know the woman behind Lucille Ball's laughs was from Indianapolis? Madeline Pugh Davis was the sole female writer of I Love Lucy. Pugh Davis is credited with helping create the Lucy character that Ball played for over 40 years. Madeline Pugh Davis graduated from Shortridge High School and went on to major in journalism at Indiana University. You don't know what you're missing if you haven't tasted the treats created by this influential Indiana entrepreneur. Gwendolyn Rogers opened her first cake bake shop in Broad Ripple back in 2014, where she quickly caught the eye of Oprah Winfrey, appearing on Oprah's O list of her favorite things. All that notoriety may have helped fuel the hankering for more cake bake. So Gwendolyn eventually opened up a second location in Carmel, where business is booming. A great example of an Indiana woman taking the cake and eating it too. Well, another Hoosier entrepreneur baking her way to the top since the late 80s, Lisa Sparks. Her pies have garnered national attention, everything from the Food Network to a spot on USA Today's list of top destination pie shops in America. We headed to Atlanta, Indiana last year to catch up with Lisa in this Around Indiana report. It's literally hidden in plain sight. Located on US 31 in Atlanta, Indiana, it's a must stop for no other reason than to buy a Lisa's pie.
I make Dutch apple, regular apple, sugar cream, cherry, black raspberry, peach, blueberry, pecan, rhubarb, strawberry, rhubarb, chocolate, coconut, butterscotch, lemon, banana, peanut butter.
Mouth-watering yet?
We do these on a daily basis. We don't keep pies over 24 hours.
And it's more than just pies, from sweetbreads to bundt cakes and even quiche. But perhaps her greatest culinary coup, pie in a jar.
I took a pie, was able to can it, pie crust and all, and we're the only ones in the nation that do it.
Believe it or not, Lisa's career didn't start in a kitchen. It was in a cornfield as a professional detasseler. Then came a cancer diagnosis that would change everything.
I realized at 29 that life was too short to be someplace where you didn't want to be.
So Lisa turned to the man upstairs for answers.
He said, pie shop? I don't like pie. I was a cake eater. I actually tried making cakes. It didn't work. Well, then I tried pies. And guess what? I'm 33 years later, still don't like pie, but I have learned to please a lot of people.
And you can go ahead and count me as one of them. Lisa brought me back to her kitchen to let me in on her secret to baking the perfect apple pie.
Welcome to my world. I love it. Now, my pies have to have fruit in them. I make everything like I would want it, even if I don't like it.
Even though you don't eat pie?
Well, it's your turn.
Oh boy. So what do you do now?
Take your pie.
There's lots of juice.
No, don't be nervous. Looky there. Voila.
Hey, okay,
now, all
it's
you
not
have to
too
do
terrible.
Is now draw your apple.
Oh, wow, this is not easy.
I love it.
Oh gosh. I'm looking at this now. Off center. But yours is dead center.
But understand, I'm 33 years later, and I can do it in my sleep. My business has always been thriving. I could make 1,000 award-winning pies every day, but unless I had the customers to come in and buy them, that doesn't make me anything. It takes everybody to do it.
Yum. Well, Martha Hoover has been a powerhouse in the Hoosier restaurant industry for more than 30 years and was another influential Indiana woman we featured on the Business and Beyond podcast. Hoover opened her first restaurant, Cafe Patachou, at the corner of 49th and Penn in Indianapolis in 1989, almost unheard of for a woman back then. Right off the bat, she experienced firsthand some of the biases women business owners were facing.
And I called the builder up and said, where the heck is my dishwasher? And he said, you know, we made the decision to leave the dishwasher out because it was expensive to plumb in and expensive for you to purchase. And we did not, here's the kicker, we did not want to waste your husband's money.
Again, to check out all of our Business and Beyond podcasts, just go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com and click on the subscribe tab. Well, that's all the time we have this week. We want to give a special thanks to all our wonderful guest hosts and our guests for joining us as we looked at some of the amazing things influential Indiana women are doing to help make Indiana great. And the music you've been listening to throughout the show is by local artist Brittany Brumfeld, aka OG Piano Babe. The DePauw alum is working to release her first solo album sometime this spring. Again, thanks for joining us this week. As Gerry would say, go out and make it a successful week.